Let me ask you a simple question each, and we'll see if we can get agreement on this, because numbers in this matter, and frankly, voters get pretty confused. So, Mr O'Brien, the nuclear cost, even your own modelling, like for like, the same energy, isn't suggesting yours will be 44% cheaper than Labor. It's 21%. So you can argue around modelling, but even your modelling says 21%. Will you stop saying 44%, because that compares much more energy Labor would produce under their plan compared to yours?
Tom, with due respect, I'm conscious I'm debating Chris and not you, but actually if it's the exact same amount of electricity you want to produce, the modelling looked at two scenarios. In both scenarios, once you put nuclear into the mix, it's actually 25% cheaper. 25% cheaper.
It's not 44.
Well, where 44% becomes relevant is Labor wants to build an electricity grid based on assumptions in the very documents Chris has there, actually, which says that come 2050, everybody is driving EVs, like everyone is driving an EV. Therefore, you have to overbuild the grid to accommodate that. They believe that green hydrogen is going to be so big, you need to almost double the size of the grid just
like for like, it's not 44, is it?
Yes, it is. You know why? Because you're comparing our plan, which is not to overbuild the grid, to Labor's plan to overbuild the grid. So
Labor's plan includes
money would be spent?
Exports, which you get money from. Anyway, that's my attempt on that one. I'll try this time now. $600 billion is the figure you've quoted a lot. The CSIRO Next Gen report found the costs of nuclear, just the actual building cost would actually be $116 billion. Isn't that a better authority to use than the lobby group Smart Energy Council, which has thrown up to $600 billion? Not $600 billion, but up to.
Well, Tom, I don't agree with respect the premise of the way you've asked the question, because absolutely the CSIRO should be the organisation we listen to. Mr O'Brien claims they've used the CSIRO. That's not true. It's just not right. The frontier modelling does not reflect CSIRO costings at all. And if it did, why would the alternative Deputy Prime Minister, Mr Littleproud, at the beginning of this campaign, in a most, I must say, I don't use the term lightly, improper intervention, alleged that the CSIRO was engaging with political interference from me? It was a grave insult to the CSIRO, and he and Ted on his behalf should apologise. What the opposition has done is use frontier modelling to ignore the CSIRO on operating costs, to ignore the CSIRO's point about first-of-kind costs, to ignore the CSIRO's point about the cost of refurbishing nuclear reactors as they go. They certainly haven't taken into account the cost of refurbishing coal, if you're going to rely on it longer. They've pushed a lot of the cost on beyond 2050. You know, they cut the limit off at 2050. So the 600... Sorry?
It's pulling this back to that figure of 600. That is an absolute maximum figure quoted by one lobby group.
You could argue it's conservative, but it's because of the cost blowouts we've seen overseas. Ted says, when he's asked about how can you ensure there's no cost blowouts in Australia, he says, I've done my homework, which I do find,
600 assumes all the worst cost blowouts from the worst projects.
Well, no, I think it's a very carefully calibrated real-world cost example.
Top-end one, absolute top-end.
No, I think that you could make...
But that group, the top end was 600, the bottom was 120.
Well, as I said, they've done real-world examples based on an analysis of what has been happening around the world. When Mr O'Brien claims
Tom,
that he
this is
respects
important.
Very briefly, before I go to
Can I please come in on this? So, you notice that Chris Bowen could not answer the question. He can't explain the $600 billion. He can't explain it. In his opening remarks, and even just then, he talked about the importance of listening to the CSIRO. If you look at the capital cost of a nuclear program under the CSIRO, Chris Bowen and the Labor Party are multiplying that by a factor of 5 to get to $600 billion. It is an utter lie. Under our plan, it will be up to $120 billion, which is consistent with the CSIRO.
Okay.
They have multiplied it by 5. It is an outright lie. And can I say, you know you've got your political opponents on the ropes when the best argument they can come out with is a complete and utter lie.